And so at the end of the session, I will do a quick Q&A. The Q&A, you can ask questions regarding statement of purpose, or you can ask questions regarding anything graduate school admissions. So let's get started here. All right, so the first thing that I want you to understand is the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose. And the reason why I wanted to start it here was because I often see previous clients of mine, they don't know this difference, and most people end up writing a personal statement. So when you are looking at your graduate school admissions applications, you want to make sure you read the prompt multiple times and you understand what they're asking of you. If they're asking for a personal statement, they're asking for more of a narrative of who you are, your personality. They're asking about your background, your perspectives, your work ethic, your tenacity, your resilience, your attitudes, etc., that have shaped your decision to pursue a graduate degree. So the personal statement is literally what the title says, right? It's personal, it's about you. The statement of purpose, on the other hand, it's a more academic essay or statement that showcases how you are prepared or are getting prepared to get into your graduate program. So it's more academic in nature. You talk more about your research, your professional experience, your courses, your preparation for graduate school, your teaching. You talk more about the experiences that have prepared you and shaped your decision to pursue a graduate education. So these are two completely different documents. And if you don't understand what the differences are, then you're going to be submitting the wrong type of statement to the committee. So I want you to make sure that you understand what these are and what the program is actually asking you to submit. Sometimes programs ask you for both statements. The personal statement is sometimes referred to as a diversity statement or a personal history statement, but they're generally the same thing. It's about your background, who you are as a person, your personality, your character, etc. So make sure when you are applying to your programs that you understand what exactly they're asking of. If they don't strictly say like, oh, we're asking for a statement of purpose, then the way that you can tell if it's a statement of purpose, if they ask you for your career goal and your preparation for the program. That's how you know that you're writing a statement of purpose and you should be formulating your essays in the way that I'm going to show you today. So once you have established if you're submitting a statement of purpose or a personal statement, you want to know the structure. So I have two outlines that you could use for your statements. One's going to be a master's and the next slide's going to be a PhD. They're generally the same with a couple of differences in terms of body paragraphs. So here's a basic outline. You don't have to follow the exact thing that I'm telling you to do here, but it's a great way to start. Or if you need help with structure, this is a great outline for you to follow. So typically you would start off with the introduction, and there's two ways you can do this. So one of them is an anecdotal introduction where you share a story, an impactful story that leads into why you're applying to grad school. That's one way you can do it. My go-to way and the way that I teach my clients is the way that I'm going to show you here. So it's basically just getting to the point. What you want to do with your introduction is you want to provide a blueprint for the committee to understand why you're applying to the program and what they can learn more about in the rest of the statement of purpose. So this blueprint, this introduction should include your clear career goals. It should include your research or field of interest. It should include the impact you want to make in your field or community members or individuals or people. It should include the name of the program and the institution, and then why you are applying to that program. This paragraph should be only one paragraph, and each one of these components should be at least one sentence. For the research and the interest part of it, you can do 2 sentences, but it should be quick, concise, to the point, and it should provide the committee with an understanding of what they should learn more about in more depth later on in the statement of purpose. After you have written your introduction, the next paragraph is your first body paragraph, number 1. And what you could do here is you can write your personal story paragraph. That's what I personally call it. As we talked about earlier in the previous paragraph, I showed you the distinction between personal statement and statement of purpose. So in a statement of purpose, you're allowed at least one paragraph that's succinct and to the point, where you kind of give the committee a personal story. So select one story in your life that was that aha moment that led you to complete your research, that led you to a master's degree, that led you to the impact you want to make in your field. But I want to caveat this and keep reiterating and saying that this should only be one story. It should be it should be one story. Don't make, don't write two paragraphs where you are talking a lot about your life. It should be one story about your personal life, and that's it. Everything else should be about your practical experiences. I'll go more into detail about each one of these paragraphs as we move forward in the presentation, but I wanted to give you just kind of some insight on what I'm going to talk about later on. In body paragraph number 2, you can either start talking about your undergraduate experiences, or if you didn't have really that much formative experience in undergrad, you can talk about like master's, or I guess maybe not master's, but work experience or internships, etc. So here you want to select one undergraduate experience, whether that is your research experience, an internship you did, an extracurricular, maybe you took on a leadership role, maybe you were in a club, maybe you were an ambassador. Whatever it is, select one of those roles that you want to dive deeper into in paragraph number 2. Body paragraph number 3, you can again select another undergraduate experience, and it has to be a little bit different from the one before. So talk about coursework, leadership roles, research, extracurriculars, internships, whatever it is that you did in undergrad. You want to make sure that you have 2 different experiences that you're speaking about that relate. This is the key part, that relate to why you're applying to graduate school in your particular program. And I'm using this as a template because I like to do the chronological order type of outline, because it just really outlines your story from like your personal to your undergrad to your work experience that have led you to this point of your life and your career, right? So body paragraph number 4 could focus on your work experience. So if you have a couple of years of experience in your field, then you want to either talk about one of those roles or maybe one of those work experiences in body paragraph number 4 and go into depth about that experience. Again, later on, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to talk about in those paragraphs. Then in body paragraph number 5, you want to, sorry, I'm admitting people right now. In body paragraph number 5, or the paragraph before your conclusion, this is going to be your why this program and why this institution paragraph. Here you're going to state the faculty you want to work with, the faculty you want to conduct research with, the faculty you want to be mentored by, any research centers you want to participate in, or other resources you want to take advantage of when you are in the program. And then finally, the last paragraph that you're going to be writing is the conclusion. In the conclusion, you want to, again, reiterate your career goal and the impact you want your work to do once you complete the master's degree. Then you also want to state what you're going to bring to the classroom, to the cohort, to the program. What unique experiences, unique perspectives are you going to bring to these spaces once you're in the program? And so that's a general outline for how you can tackle the master's degree statement of purpose. What I do want you to also think about is, what type of master's are you applying to? Are you applying to a thesis-based or research-based master's, or are you applying to a terminal master's? These are 2 different degrees that you could apply to at the master's level, and that's going to dictate what you're going to write about in your body paragraphs. If you are applying to a thesis-based or research-based master's, you want to make sure your body paragraphs focus on research. If you're applying to a practical or terminal master's, you want to make sure your body paragraphs focus on your practical experiences. So make sure you understand what you're applying to, because it's going to help you determine how to write a strong statement of purpose at their master's level. So now let's talk about the PhD degree. So again, as you can tell, a lot of these are very similar to the master's degree. So I'm not going to go through every single body paragraph here, but what I do want to show you is the differences. So if we look at body paragraph number 5, this is what I titled the mini dissertation paragraph. And here you're going to explain your research interest. So a PhD is a research degree, and part of your PhD milestones is going to require a dissertation. And so you want to provide the committee with a little idea of what type of research you're going to be conducting. And you can do this by dedicating one paragraph to explaining what that might look like. The committee obviously understands that as you progress through your program, as you take courses, as you interact with faculty, this dissertation is going to be shaped by those experiences. It's going to shift from what you wrote in the statement of purpose. But you want to provide the committee with an idea of what you might explore as a PhD student. So I'll go more deeper into what to include in that mini dissertation paragraph, but that's really the purpose of this paragraph. And I recommend that you dedicate one paragraph to this because it's going to help you stand out from other applicants. Not every applicant does this. And I worked with many clients. I think I worked with over 200 clients so far in my since I started my social media accounts. But yeah, so not everybody does this, but this does help um set you apart from other applicants. So make sure that you include this in your PhD statement of purpose. And then I do want to just give you more information about body paragraph number 6 here, why this program and why this institution. For the PhD degree, you want to focus on faculty because at the PhD level, fit is what matters. No one really, like GPA, that's important. As long as you have a 3.0, you're competitive. But all that information is important to an extent. What really matters is, does your research fit with the faculty member at that institution? And because you're going to need a mentor that's going to help you throughout every phase of your PhD coursework, right? Your PhD process. And so if you don't have that mentor who can guide you and who could help advance your research, then you're probably not going to get in. So focus body paragraph number 6 on 2 to 3 faculty versus research centers, courses, etc. Focus it first on the faculty. Then if you have enough space, talk about those extra resources. All right, so now that we have seen 2 structures, one for a master's, one for a PhD, let's get into a little activity. So what I want you to do is either on a piece of paper, on your computer, on a Word document, or on your phone and your notes, I want you to start thinking about some stories or experiences you can dive more deeper into your statement of purpose. So on the right-hand side here, I put headings. So these are the headings that I discussed briefly when I was discussing the outlines. So what I want you to do is I want you to choose one of those headings, and I want you to write experiences that you have done within that heading. So for example, if I chose work experiences, then I'm going to think about all the work that I have done at the professional end. So I've been a director for 2 federally funded programs, and I ran a bunch of initiatives through those programs. So I'm going to name every initiative that I wrote. And you want to write you want to have this list should be things that you can tell a deeper story about, but that also relate to why you're applying to your graduate program. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to start making a list, and that's going to help you, better prepare your outline and better prepare you to write the statement of purpose. So let's do 2 minutes. I'm going to put a timer here, and then and then we'll move on with the next part of the presentation. If you have questions, I forgot to mention this. If you have questions as we move through this, put them in the chat, and then I will answer them at the end of the presentation. All right, so 2 minutes to do this. All right, so let's move on to the introduction. So now what I'm going to do is throughout the presentation, I'm going to go through every section of what I shared earlier, and I'm going to give you just kind of some insight on what to write in that paragraph. And then it's going to be followed by an example that you're going to be able to read from successful statement of purpose regarding that paragraph in their statement of purpose. So in the introduction, like I mentioned earlier, you want to have a couple of components, and these components you need to have your introduction, and they should be succinct, one sentence. So like I mentioned, it should be you should mention your career goal. You want to have clear career goals. What do you want to become, or what do you want to pursue upon completion of the program? So for example, when I was applying to grad school, I wanted to become a professor and a college access and equity researcher. So you want to make sure you're specific to what you want to be once you're done with the program. Then you want to include your research interest or field interest. So what are you interested in learning and or exploring as a graduate student? And why are you applying? So what has led you to that interest, right? So my work revolves around college access and equity. So that's kind of what I would write. But then I would be more specific and say, like, I'm interested in looking at the community college transfer experiences of Latino students. And so I want you to be that specific with who you want to target in terms of the impact, but also what really your interests are. Don't be broad. Don't say like something like, I always see something like, I want to be a policymaker because I want to change people's lives. That's too broad. The community's interested in learning like, what type of impact are you going to make right away once you complete your master's degree or PhD program? And the impact has to be realistic as well, because they want to make sure they train those students in their program to be able to make an immediate impact once they graduate. And that next piece here is impact. So what impact do you want to make in your field, community, etc.? Be detailed in your target population or community. This doesn't, depending on your field, this doesn't always have to be an impact to a target population. For example, in education, it's more suitable for you to have a target population. It can be like maybe the African American community, the Latino community. It can be maybe you want to work with or you want to impact low income communities or migrant farm workers or whatever it is. Be specific with that target population. In other fields, it could be something different. Maybe you want to advance technology to I don't know, build tools that will be more efficient to solving problems in your field. Whatever it is, the point is be specific. Be specific to the point where that idea could only relate to you, that you came up with it, that you're the innovator. If you leave it broad, that broad idea could apply to any applicant that's applying in that pool. So you want to make sure you stand out. And the way you stand out is by being detailed when you're explaining your research interest, your impact, your career goal. That's what's going to set you apart from other applicants. Then you also want to mention your program and institution. So name the program you are applying to, the concentrations, the institution. And the reason why I say this, it could be, I guess people might see it as more like counterintuitive because we assume that the committee should know which program you're applying to. But sometimes these programs or these committees, especially at the master's level, they're reviewing applications from all of their offerings, not just one particular program. So you want to make sure that the committee members know exactly what you're applying to, what concentration. Some programs have multiple concentrations, and what institution you're applying to. Just put it in there in a sentence. It could even be like half, like the first clause of a sentence. And then you follow that with the last point here is, why are you applying to the program? And this should be one sentence because later on, you're going to explain more about why you're applying. So it can be something as simple as the PhD in education at the University of California, San Diego will help me reach my goal of becoming a professor and researcher in the community college sector. This program will provide me with the theoretical knowledge and practical experiences and research training to be able to solve pressing problems in the community college sector, something like that. So something specific that shows them, okay, here's why they're applying to this program. Later on, you're going to go more deeper into explaining why and how this program will help you reach your goals. So here's actually my example of when I applied to the Harvard University program, and here's what I wrote for my introduction. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to read this, and then I'm going to highlight some things that I did right, and maybe where I could have improved in terms of having a stronger introduction. All right, so some of the things that I did right. So from the tips that I give earlier, I mentioned the program, right? So everybody knows here that I'm applying to Education Policy and Management Master's Program and the institution, Harvard University. I would say that I did an okay job of explaining who I wanted to target in terms of target population. So from here, we learned that I'm interested working at the local level. I'm also interested in working with marginalized students in small rural towns in the state of Washington. So that's specific. The only thing that I would maybe have changed here is, as a reader, I would question and be like, who are these marginalized students? What does that mean in your context? So I would provide more information there. But I think I was detailed enough with my local level, small rural towns, Washington State, that it was fine. And obviously I got in. Something else I did well here is I talked about my graduate goals. So I talked about that I wanted to develop policy. So just telling the committee that when I'm in the program, I'm interested in learning how to develop policy at the graduate level to improve the lives of this population of students. So that's where my impact comes in play. Then at the end, I talk a little bit about why the EPM program is ideal for me. So I wanted to learn theoretical knowledge, practical experience. Then I went further in saying because I want to be an agent of change and I wanted to create interventions for underserved students. So you see how detailed I am in my explanation, even though this paragraph is short. It has about, I think it's 4 sentences. I was able to fit so much into 4 sentences. And that's what you have to do when you're writing your statement of purpose. Be succinct, detailed, to the point, and make sure your point comes across strong. Okay, so the next paragraph that you could potentially add, you don't have, so I do want to just kind of preface some of this, these next couple of slides by saying that these are paragraphs you could add to your statement of purpose. You don't have to add each one of these. So what I want you to do is I want you to be selective in terms of how you share your journey from undergrad into where you're at now and why and how that has shaped your decision to pursue graduate school. So don't feel like you have to write every one of these paragraphs when you're writing your statement of purpose. But the next paragraph you can write is the personal story. And so when I worked with clients so far, a lot of them write multiple paragraphs about their personal story. They try to tell a whole life story in their statement of purpose. And that's what you should not do when you are writing your statement of purpose. You want to choose one formative experience that's personal, that has led you to pursue graduate school and make the impact you want to make with this degree. And so a couple of examples of this. So you could choose maybe, for example, in the education world, and I'm going to be doing a lot of education examples because that's my field. But in the education world, I typically see people talking about their experience navigating education or college applications, whatever it is, their experience doing that. And so that's their formative experience. Some people talk about like maybe themselves in the classroom. If you're maybe in the sciences and you're interested in, let's say, I don't know, curing cancer or something through research, right? Maybe you talk about an experience where you either had a family member that had some type of cancer or some type of disease, disorder, whatever it is, that shaped your interest and motivation to pursue your chosen career. Maybe you you had an extracurricular activity where you worked with patients who were on hospice, and you tell the story of how you were communicating or you were talking to an elderly person in hospice and talked about that experience and how that led you to want to pursue finding a cure for that disease, whatever it is. So what personal experience can you talk about, just one, that has led you and motivated you to pursue your career? It should be concise and to the point. And I want you to try to avoid overgeneralizing your experience. In the example that I'm going to share earlier, that person did overgeneralize, but it can work for certain fields. So for example, in education, you can overgeneralize your middle school and high school experience. But in some fields, it might not work. So I want you to try to avoid that and be specific. But if you can't, then make sure your overgeneralization does fit with why you're applying to the program. But you want to select one of those experiences. Don't tell your life story. And when you select that experience, what you need to mention is the context. So speak about the context, speak about the experience, speak about what happened, what was your reaction, what were your challenges, how did you react to those challenges, let's see, and how this experience has shaped your decision to pursue graduate education. And so you should be talking about the process of the experience versus just getting to the end result. The committee is not just interested in the impact you made with your work, but they also want to know what gaps in your knowledge and skills do you have that a graduate degree can help fill. You're applying to this graduate degree to gain some new skills, so to gain some new knowledge that you can apply in your work or your practice or your research to advance that work. If you're showcasing to the committee that you already are an expert in what you do, then why would they want to admit you if you already know everything? So they also want to know those challenges. They want to know those gaps in your knowledge. They want to know about what you wonder what questions you have in the field, and how this degree can help you close those gaps in your knowledge and skill. You should not just focus on all your accomplishments, all your accolades. That's the purpose for that is the resume. Here you're talking about what do you still need to learn to make a greater impact in your field. Showcase how you attempted to mitigate some of those challenges in your field, where you fell short, and what you want to learn more about in your degree. And that's the purpose of these paragraphs. It's not just to share, I made this great impact on my community. That's great, right? But you also want to tell them like, okay, you made a great impact, but where are your gaps? So focus on that when you're writing these paragraphs. All right, so let's look at the example again. This person overgeneralized, but it worked for their field. So I'm going to give you a minute, read it, and then I'll point out some good things that this person did. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, this person overgeneralized, which I typically wouldn't advise, but it worked for this applicant because I think their whole goal in the first half of this paragraph was to showcase how there was discrepancies in their experience as a student in middle school and high school. So their goal was to showcase that their school didn't have a college-going culture because of these reasons. And then that led into their experience at UC Berkeley because of their underpreparedness in middle school and high school. They weren't a confident student at UC Berkeley. And so this worked for this applicant. And so you can overgeneralize if that's the case. But what I do want to show you here that the applicant did really well was that this applicant was able to talk about multiple experiences at the in their education, right? So they used 3 sentences to talk about middle school and high school. Then they used 2 sentences to talk about, or maybe 3 sentences to talk about UC Berkeley. So I want to just point out that in these statements, you have to get to the point. If you're taking way too long to describe your high school, middle school experience or your undergraduate experience, the committee is going to get bored. The committee has a lot of applications to look through and a lot of statement of purposes to read. So you want to get to the point right away, and you want to make sure that your point comes across, and then you showcase why you're applying. That's the whole goal of these paragraphs, is to showcase why you're applying to these programs. So get to the point, avoid the fluff, avoid the extra information that's not necessary. You want to get to the point. What is your point? How does that point relate to your motivation to pursue your degree? How does that point relate to the impact you want to make in your field? So get to the point when you're writing your personal story. Again, don't feel like you have to write your entire life story in your statement of purpose. So another paragraph that you can write, and especially if you're if you're applying to a PhD program or a research-based master's, is research experience. So when you describe your research experience, you want to name the lab that you can conduct this work with, the overall objectives of the lab, and the faculty mentor who is supervising your work. And this is important because if you're applying to a program that is that maybe might know the lab that you work at or the faculty mentor who you work with, this can give you some points in terms of them looking at your application more closely. It doesn't guarantee that they're gonna accept you, but because you're working with certain faculty, that shows some type of prestige in your field. And so you want to mention who you're working under. And if that person's writing you a letter of recommendation, it's going to make your case much stronger. It's going to provide the committee with some type of confidence that you're able to succeed in their program because they know who your faculty mentor are. They possibly might have worked with them on different projects or different initiatives. So make sure that you name these people in your research paragraph. Then when you're describing your experience, you want to provide the title of the research project. You want to provide your role in the project. So if you're not leading the project, what is your role in that project? You also want to mention the research questions you're trying to answer, the hypothesis, how did you find answers to this question? So your methods, what were the results, what were the limitations, and what did you learn from this experience that has led you to pursue a graduate degree? That last piece there, the way that I would tackle it is by showcasing the limitations or gaps of the work. When you're in a PhD program, the whole purpose of a PhD program is for you to fill in the gaps of the larger literature. And this is a great way for you to showcase that you understand the research process. So what were the limitations of your research, and how has that helped you think of new questions to ask that you want to pursue at the graduate level? So that's the way that I would tackle this experience in your statement of purpose. So now let's look at an example here. It's a long one, so I'm going to give you a little bit more time, but this applicant does a lot of things really well. And this is for a PhD program. All right, so at the beginning of this paragraph, the applicant writes why they chose this topic or what led them to apply to an honors thesis program. And they did that by providing one sentence. And so they described why they applied to the honors thesis program and their topic, right? The topic of their project. Then what I really liked about this paragraph is that they described their methodology, right? They did in-depth interviews, and here's what they asked in those in-depth interviews. But what I really liked was that they decided to talk about their coding schemes. As a reader, that tells me that this applicant has a strong command of the research process. They talked about how they coded their interviews, and they used theoretical frameworks to shape those codes, that coding scheme. So as a reader, that tells me that this applicant is deep into the research literature on this topic and education as a whole. So I want you to do something similar when you are writing your statement of purpose, particularly your research paragraph. Then they talk about the results and how those results lead to broader implications, which is the last sentence in this paragraph here. So this applicant does really like a lot of things really well, and it really shows me as a reader that this applicant is truly a up and coming researcher. And I do want to, because I know this whole paragraph and I actually know this applicant applied to this PhD program right out of undergrad. And so this experience here is from their undergraduate experience. And so to me, that's impressive. As a reader, I'm like, okay, this person really knows research. This person at the undergraduate level, they really got really good training from their mentor on how to actually conduct research. And so this program was actually a PhD at Harvard. And so the applicant obviously got in. So I want you to be this specific, show that you have a command of the research process when you're writing your statement of purpose, particularly your research experience paragraphs. All right, so another paragraph that you could talk about or you can write is your coursework experience paragraph. And so here you're going to want to either talk about your undergraduate, or if you already have a graduate degree, a master's degree, you can talk about your master's degree coursework, but you want to select one of those courses that led you to learn more about your field and that led you to pursue a graduate degree. So you want to name the course, name the professor, name the overall purpose of the course, and this will give some context to the reader on what that course entails, etc. And then you want to select an assignment you completed in that course and talk deeper about it. And that assignment should showcase how that knowledge led to your pursuit of a graduate degree in your field. So name the assignment, what you did in the assignment, the process of completing the assignment, not just the results or the outcome, what you learned, and how this assignment motivated you to pursue a graduate degree. The committee is not interested in you telling them like, oh, I got an A on the course. That they can look at your transcript. What they care about is, how did this course help change your perspective on your field or your field of study? What type of literature did you read? So if you're talking about, let's say, an essay you wrote in the course, how were your ideas formulated by reading books, articles, basically showing them your critical thinking skills, your critical thinking process when you're describing your coursework in this paragraph. So that's how you should be tackling this this paragraph if you choose to include this in your statement of purpose. This is kind of like a new paragraph that I started seeing this year in terms of the clients that I worked with. In the past, I haven't really seen that many people talk about coursework in particular when they're writing a statement of purpose, but it's a new thing that I've seen in the last year. I don't have an example for this one because it's a new thing. I couldn't find an example for my previous clients, but it could be a powerful way for you to further describe why you're applying to graduate school. But also, if you have limited experiences in research, this is a great way for you to showcase that you have somewhat a command of the research process. Because if you're talking about an assignment, let's say a research paper, you can talk about that research paper by using research terminology and how you went about finding answers to your questions, finding answers to your thesis statement, etc. So you can use this coursework if you have limited experience with research, the formal research process. So the next paragraph that you could talk about is your undergraduate experience. And this could either be clubs, internships, extracurricular activities, but you want to select one. I keep emphasizing the one because oftentimes I see people talk about a lot of experiences into one paragraph. They don't really care about you reiterating your resume. They're going to look at your resume as well, not just your statement of purpose. So you can leave your whole resume to the resume or CV. What they care about in your statement of purpose is the story behind those experiences. So select one and talk deeper about it. Name the organization, its mission, and your role. Select one initiative or project that you completed while in that role and talk about it more in detail. What was the initiative? What was your role? What did you do? Explain the process of making the impact. What were the challenges? What did you do to solve the challenges? What are the limitations of your skills and knowledge? How did it impact students? What did the students say? How do you know you actually made an impact? Stuff like that, I would talk about in your paragraph about your undergraduate experience. And then finally, tie it back to why you're applying to grad school. How did this experience shape your interest in your field? So let's look at an example. All right, so the applicant here does a really good job of describing a couple of things, right? So we learned that they are a Italian major. We learned that they studied abroad 3 times, that they worked with the United Nations of Italy. But then they mentioned the offices that they worked at, and then they said very briefly what they did in those offices. But what I want you to note here is how they tied it back to their research interest or why they're applying to grad school. So they talk about gender inequality, and they talk about how that work, that experience, led for them to publish research on this topic. So you see how this applicant is succinct to the point, one sentence to describe their experience, one sentence to describe how that experience informed their decision to pursue research in the topic, how that research led to a publication and a presentation. So I want you to be that, to the point and concise. One sentence, one sentence. Don't spend so much time describing stuff that's maybe irrelevant. So for those people that have been out of school for a while and are applying as working professionals, let's say, you could talk about your work experience also in your statement of purpose. So what you want to do is if you have had multiple roles in your professional life, select one of those jobs and speak about it more in detail. So within the one job, select one project or one initiative that you led and speak about it again in more detail. What was the project, its objectives, your role, the process of completing the work, the limitations of that work, how you intended to mitigate those challenges, the impact that you made, how you assess that impact, and then what the gaps in your knowledge and skill are that you hope a graduate degree will help bridge. As you can tell, as I progress through this presentation, literally the last bullet point, what you're trying to talk about in these paragraphs are generally the same. They're obviously going to have different topics because every one of these things are different, but you want to stick to the process. Talk about the process, not just the end result or the accolade or the accomplishment. Talk about the process. That committee's interested in learning how your brain works, how you formulate ideas, how you tackle those ideas, those challenges, how you your innovative spirit, how are you being innovative in the field, how are you pushing the boundary, and and that's a great indicator of what you're going to be doing at the graduate level and beyond the graduate level. They want the next scholars in the field. They want to accept the next innovators. They want to accept the next change agents in your field. So you showcase that in these paragraphs. Let's look at the next example here. All right, so some of the things that this applicant did well was they mentioned what they did, right? So their City Year Miami um, mentor, and they mentioned the squad they worked with, and then they right away talked about challenges and struggles they saw in the classroom in this algebra class. And so they talked about those challenges, and then they talked about how they went about mitigating that challenge. So what they did was they partnered with the local program to provide free eye exams and glasses. And that helped improve student outcomes in algebra. And then the last sentence here showcases how that relates to their pursuit of, in this case, a PhD program. They said, I witnessed the transformative power of community-based collaboration and school-based intervention. So if you read the whole statement of purpose, you know that this applicant is really interested in community-based partnerships. And so this example showcases how they already attempted to do that and the outcome of that and how they want to continue to do research in that space. So you see how interconnected everything is from these applicants. So I want to make sure that you understand that every paragraph that you're writing in the statement of purpose is interconnected and it builds on each other. So the next paragraph is the mini dissertation paragraph. And so this is similar to the research experience paragraph that I shared earlier. Um, and so what you want to do first is you want to start by stating your broad research agenda. And so this gives the committee an idea of what type of work you might want to do in your career. And so at the beginning of this presentation, I said that I wanted to become a college access and equity researcher. And so that's broad enough to tell the committee that, okay, I'm interested in college access and equity work. And so that's kind of what I want you to do. I want you to just kind of do a broad statement saying like, here's what I want to focus my career in research as, and then follow that with the specific research project you want to conduct as a PhD student. So again, with my example, I said that I was interested in looking at or exploring community college transfer for Latino students. So then I want you to, do that. So broad research agenda followed by a specific project that you'll be doing at the graduate level. Then when you're describing your mini dissertation, you want to describe the name of the project, so the topic, the questions you want to answer, the method you're going to use to answer those questions, theories that are going to help guide your methodology and your analysis, implications and broader impacts of your work. Why is this work important? And so this kind of like little outline here doesn't always apply to every field, but it applies to the majority. So in the like, let's say humanities area, then you would follow this template here. In the sciences, then you would probably not talk about theories because I've heard, I could be wrong here, but I've heard that in the sciences you don't really use theoretical frameworks to shape your research. It's more like lab work, etc. So for the sciences, you don't have to include the theories part of it, and for every other field you should. So let's look at an example here. All right, so as applicant, what they do, obviously, if you would read the entire statement of purpose, it would make a little bit more sense. But the previous example that I gave about the sociology thesis, so that is part of this statement of purpose as well. So that thesis that we looked at earlier led to their proposed PhD dissertation topic. And so they describe at the beginning the limitations of the work that they have done, both in the practical and research sense. Then they talk about how they would tackle this topic, right? So they talked about critical race and gender theory as their theoretical frameworks. They talked about doing a qualitative interview-based study. They talked about some of the things that they want to further explore in terms of those interviews. And then at the end, they talk about the broader implications, right? So they're pretty much claiming that the American society is the Chicano Latino population is increasing, and here's why it's important for us to study this topic now. Okay, so the next paragraph, and this one, every statement of purpose should have, regardless of what program you're applying to. It's the why this program paragraph. In this paragraph, your goal is to convince the committee that this program aligns with your research and career goals that you wrote in the introduction. You want to select 3 to 5 resources that will help you advance your work and gaps in the knowledge and skills that you talked about in the previous paragraphs. If you're applying for a PhD or a research-based master's, you have to name 2 to 3 faculty whose research aligns with yours. You want to state their research, so do some research on their website, but don't just stop there. You want to explain how that faculty's research and expertise will help advance your work. So how is their knowledge going to help you complete your projects? Once you've done that, then you can name research centers, courses, other resources that will help bridge the gaps in your skills and knowledge that you presented earlier. Make sure you do your research on the website so you can name drop these things. So name the course, name the research center, name the projects, and explain why and how those projects and those courses are going to help you be a stronger scholar. Yeah, so basically, what is the resource and how will it help advance your work? So let's jump into an example here, an example. So this statement of purpose is a little bit unique because this applicant only wrote about one faculty and that's it. They didn't even write about any other resources. But yeah, so this person got in. This program was at NYU. And I think his tactic here was that he only wanted to go to this program because of this mentor. So if you're in that position where you're like, there's not that many resources here in my program, I really want to go because of just this one faculty, it's okay for you to mention one person, right? But just keep in mind that that does decrease your chances of getting into the program because there might not be other people that might take you as a mentee. And so this person, they were only interested in this professor, and so they only mentioned this professor. But what I really liked about this paragraph was that they at the beginning they stated again what type of research they're trying to conduct, right, and what type of topics. Then they mentioned the professor and what that professor specializes in and how that expertise is going to help with their advancement in their research, in their practice, and what they want to do in the career. And they really do a nice job of meshing 2 different cultures, right? They talk about the Mexican American culture and East Asian culture. And so that's really cool, I think, and that's really unique because you normally don't associate those 2 different cultures together. So that's bringing a new perspective to the field. Okay, so then we're nearing the end of this presentation here, and the last paragraph is your conclusion. So in the conclusion, you want to leave a lasting impression to the committee. You want to remind them about the impact that you want to make and your career goal. Then you also want to include what you're going to contribute to the cohort, the classroom, the program, and the institution. Graduate programs are interested in accepting students with different perspectives, diverse perspectives. And so I want you to, touch base on that in this paragraph. What unique perspectives and backgrounds do you have that you want to showcase in the classroom, in the cohort, in the program, to kind of provide a new perspective in your field? So write that in your conclusion. Let's look at our final example here. All right, so this applicant does a couple of things really well. So they again reiterate what their passion is and what career they want to pursue. Then they actually don't talk about their unique perspectives and what they're going to bring to the classroom. Instead, they tie it back to something they talked about in the introductory paragraph. So they talked about how they want to be more involved in this inclusability program, because they already have experience with best buddies, which they talked about earlier in the statement of purpose. Then they describe that they want to continue to contribute to these diverse initiatives on campus. So they're essentially not saying that they will bring these perspectives into the classroom or their program, but they still talk about how they are interested in inclusivity and diversity in their statement of purpose here. So yeah, so it's a strong conclusion. Not all conclusions have to look the same, but if you follow the advice I gave you earlier, that's a great way to write your concluding paragraph. All right, so I'm gonna stop share here. Is there any questions? I'm gonna look at here at the chat, and I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna stop recording as well.